A senator's daughter stepped into Judge Caprio's courtroom, dressed in designer clothes, wearing expensive sunglasses, and carrying herself with unmistakable confidence. She had no idea she was about to face someone immune to family influence. What followed revealed what real justice looks like canned. It was far from what she expected. The heavy oak doors creaked open as 20-year-old Emma Richardson entered. Clearly accustomed to attention, she remained in her sunglasses indoors, a subtle display of how she regarded authority. Judge Caprio looked up from his paperwork, his seasoned hands pausing over the docket. "Emma Richardson," he read aloud, his voice shaped by decades on the bench. 3 violations: excessive speed, improper use of an accessible parking space, and failure to comply with a lawful order from a peace officer. Emma took her seat with practiced ease, crossing her legs as if posing for a photo shoot. The courtroom lights reflected off her costly jewelry. "That officer had no idea who he was dealing with," she said, her tone implying that explanation should settle the matter. The judge slowly raised his eyes. And who exactly was he dealing with? Her smile was polished, perfected through years of political appearances. "Senator Richardson's daughter. I assumed you'd recognize the name." Murmurs spread through the gallery. Even the court clerk paused, drawn into the moment. Judge Caprio nodded calmly. "I do recognize the name. But inside this courtroom, you are not defined by your father's title. You are simply a member of this community accused of violating the law." A crack appeared in Emma's composed exterior. "Fine. Just tell me what I owe. My assistant can take care of the payment." The judge's gaze didn't waver. "This courtroom isn't a drive-through, Miss Richardson. Justice isn't a transaction. It requires understanding and reflection." Someone in the back stifled a sound of approval. Emma's face hardened. "You find this entertaining. My father has considerable influence in this state." "And your father," Judge Caprio replied evenly, "is not the one answering for these actions today?" Emma let out a sharp breath, caught between disbelief and annoyance. So this is how small-town politics works. Her bodyguard shifted beside her, silent but imposing. On the table, her phone recorded everything, a red light blinking as it captured the exchange. She clearly believed the footage would support her version of events. Judge Caprio noticed it immediately. "Please turn off the recording device." She leaned back, arms crossed in defiance. "Isn't transparency a cornerstone of democracy? Or is there something here you'd rather keep out of public view?" An uneasy tension settled over the courtroom. The judge's tone remains calm. "You're confusing real transparency with putting on a performance. True accountability isn't something meant to be live-streamed for entertainment." Emma's smirk falters briefly, her confidence slipping. Judge Caprio continues, his voice lower and more serious. "Miss Richardson, I've seen thousands of people pass through this courtroom. Some seek mercy, some search for redemption, and some must learn humility. But I've never encountered anyone so afraid of being seen as ordinary." Her smile disappears completely. The judge folds his hands. "So I ask you, now will you stand before this court as Senator Richardson's daughter, or as Emma Richardson, a citizen bound by the same laws as everyone else?" She lifts her chin defiantly. "I'm not afraid of being in the spotlight." "That's precisely why I'm not calling the cameras," he replies quietly. A deep silence settles over the room. Emma's bodyguard shifts in his seat. Everyone waits for what comes next. Judge Caprio's voice softens, sounding almost weary. "You entered this courtroom believing your family name made you untouchable. You'll leave understanding something different. Names fade with time, but character endures." The room remains perfectly still. The earlier tension gives way to a colder, heavier quiet, the kind that appears when the truth finally surfaces. "It seems your goal today was to prove the rules don't apply to people like you," the judge says, his tone steady. But you'll learn what the law truly exists for a moving privilege until only the truth remains. The air grows heavier as Judge Caprio studies Emma with genuine curiosity. "How old are you, Miss Richardson?" 20, she replies, the familiar smirk returning. "Though I've experienced more of the world than most people, twice my age at least, that's how society treats me." The judge nods slowly. Age matters far less than wisdom. True maturity reveals itself in how someone responds the first time they hear the word. "No," she tilts her head with practiced casualness. "Then I suppose I missed that lesson. That word hasn't really been part of my vocabulary." Her admission hangs in the air, leaving the room silent. Judge Caprio leans forward slightly. "Do you live with your parents?" Emma lets out a laugh that carries no real amusement. If the occasional FaceTime call counts as living together, then sure. Her tone sharpens, though fatigue slips through. "My father is always in Washington." "Always," she adds more softly. "My mother teaches at Harvard. We're what you'd call a picture-perfect, family-perfect smiles for perfect moments, but always at a distance." The judge's brow tightens. "And where do you fit into that carefully constructed image?" Emma's lips curve upward, but the smile fades almost as soon as it appears. "Wherever the media strategists decide I should stand." Judge Caprio remains silent, allowing the uncomfortable truth to linger. Sometimes the most powerful response is saying nothing at all. After a long pause, he asks gently, "What do you pursue for yourself, Miss Richardson?" She blinks, clearly confused. "I'm not sure what you mean." "Activities that serve your own interests," he clarifies. "Not your father's public image. Not future headlines. Something that belongs solely to Emma Richardson." Her jaw tightens defensively. "I don't have that luxury. Everything I do has to reflect positively on my family's reputation." Judge Caprio's voice drops to barely above a whisper. "That isn't privilege, Miss Richardson. That's a form of imprisonment." Her laugh is sharp and tense. "Save the amateur psychology. I'm not here for therapy. Just give me the fine and let me leave." He doesn't look away. Instead, he reaches for a manila folder on his desk. "This matter goes far beyond a simple fine. According to the arresting officer's report, you refused to present your driver's license. You also made a specific statement." He reads directly from the document. "My father will handle this. He handles everything, including your pension." Gasps ripple through the courtroom. Emma straightens, anger seeping into her previously controlled posture that was completely taken out of context. Judge Caprio closes the folder with deliberate care. "The context, Miss Richardson, is your entire life, and it tells a far clearer story than any single statement ever could." For the first time since entering the courtroom, she has no immediate reply. Her phone vibrates against the table. A message lights up the screen. "Dad, in committee meeting. Don't cause complications." She turns the phone face down, but not before the judge notices. "Does your father know about today's hearing?" he asks quietly. She hesitates. "He told me not to worry. Said he'd make a few strategic calls." Judge Caprio nods once. Then perhaps today will be the first time someone doesn't automatically yield to his influence. The courtroom falls silent again. Emma's confidence, once unshakable, now feels hollow. "You've been taught to believe that power equals protection," Judge Caprio continues thoughtfully. "But power can also become the heaviest prison ever built. You've lived inside it for so long that you've mistaken confinement for safety." Her voice softens. "You really think I'm that lost?" He meets her eyes directly. "I think you've been trained so thoroughly to win that you've forgotten what it means to be morally right." His words strike home. Emma crosses her arms again, but this time it feels less like defiance and more like self-protection. "I don't need moral guidance from anyone," she says. though her voice no longer carries the same certainty. "Just make your ruling." He closes the file gently. "I will issue my ruling, but not now, not today. First, I want you to experience what it's like when your family name no longer shields you. You may discover it's actually liberating." She exhales through clenched teeth. "You can't intimidate me." "I'm not trying to intimidate you," Judge Caprio replies calmly. "I'm offering you the chance to step out from beneath your family shadow. You might be surprised by how much lighter the world feels." The courtroom remains utterly still, everyone waiting for what comes next. All her life, Emma had been protected by wealth and influence. Now, for the first time, she was facing someone who could not be pressured or intimidated. That realization frightened her more than guilt ever had. The following morning, the courtroom feels different. The air is heavier, charged with anticipation rather than curiosity. Judge Caprio reviews a document that hadn't been part of the previous day's proceedings. Emma sits motionless, appearing less polished than before. Her hair is simply pulled back, and her phone is nowhere in sight. "Miss Richardson," he says, "before we continue, I need to read something aloud." This didn't come from the police department. The judge's voice carries a seriousness that causes everyone to lean forward slightly. Emma frowns, clearly surprised. Then who sent it? He adjusts his reading glasses. "A mother named Laura Bennett. You parked in the space designated for her disabled child's transportation." Emma shifts uneasily in her seat. "I wasn't aware of the specific circumstances." Judge Caprio interrupts, calm but firm. "Let's determine whether that's true." He begins reading from the letter. "I politely asked her to move her car so I could access my son's wheelchair ramp. She laughed and said, 'Your kid isn't the only one with leg problems.' I'm wearing heels." The courtroom falls completely silent. Even the steady hum of the ventilation seems to stop. Judge Caprio folds the letter carefully. "Did you say that?" Emma's voice wavers between defensiveness and dawning shame. "It was meant as a joke. She misunderstood my intent." The judge's tone sharpens. "Some words don't have harmless interpretations, Miss Richardson. You don't joke about suffering you've never endured." Murmurs ripple through the gallery. Emma's face reddens, but she lifts her chin stubbornly. "You're acting like I physically hurt someone." "No one was injured." He nods slowly. "That's exactly what privilege sounds like, the belief that harm only matters when it's visible." Judge Caprio signals to the bailiff, who turns on the courtroom monitor. Body camera footage begins to play, showing Emma laughing, flipping her hair, and telling the officer to relax. In the background, the mother pleads, her voice trembling. "Please, I just need enough space to lower the wheelchair ramp." Emma's recorded reply echoes clearly through the room. "Then maybe you should buy a smaller car." No one moves. No one speaks. Judge Caprio lets the silence linger before speaking again, his voice low and controlled. "Yesterday, you told me you never hear the word no. Today, you heard it from your own past self. And I believe even she would be ashamed of what she's seeing." Emma's eyes glisten briefly, but she quickly blinks away any sign of vulnerability. "You don't understand what my life is really like," she mutters. "You think I'm some kind of cartoon villain?" Judge Caprio interrupts gently. "I think you're a young woman who mistook indulgence for genuine affection." Her breath catches audibly. "You think you have me all figured out?" He leans forward, showing compassion rather than judgment. "Over the years, I've encountered hundreds of people like you. Children of powerful families are often shaped by emotional neglect. You're not the first to mistake arrogance for armor." His words land differently. The courtroom remains silent, and in that quiet, Emma's defensive tone sounds hollow and strained. Judge Caprio continues. "The woman you mocked didn't ask for financial compensation. She asked for something far more difficult to give. Emma frowns, genuinely confused. What could that be? Understanding, he replies simply. She wants you to learn that empathy isn't weakness. It's what keeps power from turning into cruelty. Emma looks down at her hands, her voice barely audible. So what happens now? You want me to write an apology letter? He shakes his head. No, I want real change. You have 24 hours to find Mrs. Bennet and her son. Speak with them directly. Learn what true humility sounds like. Her old defiance flares instantly. You can't make me do that. His voice remains calm. You're right. I can't. But if you choose not to, I will release the body camera footage to the media. Let's see how the public reacts when a senator's daughter mocks a disabled child. All the color drains from her face. Judge Caprio leans back in his chair. This isn't punishment, Miss Richardson. It's perspective. For too long, you've seen the world through tinted glass. Now it's time to see clearly. She had always avoided confronting herself honestly. That day, the judge forced her to face the truth. And for the first time, she didn't like what she saw. Just past noon, the door opens. Judge Caprio looks up as Emma enters, this time alone. She arrives without an entourage, without sunglasses, and without any trace of defiance. She moves quietly and takes her seat. The scrape of the chair sounding louder than words. You were scheduled to arrive 30 minutes ago. The judge notes calmly. I know, she replies. I almost didn't come. Why? She hesitates, choosing her words carefully. Because I didn't know what I'd say if I had failed completely. Judge Caprio nods with understanding. And did you fail? Emma reaches into her bagknot, the expensive Prada from before. But a simple leather satcheland places a folded letter on the table. I found her, Mrs. Bennet. The judge's expression softens, and Emma's voice trembles slightly. She refused to take my money. I offered to pay for everything, the missed appointment, the inconvenience, anything she wanted. She said she didn't need financial compensation. Judge Caprio leans forward with genuine interest. What did she need? Emma looks down, struggling for words, for me to understand. He waits patiently. She told me about her son, Emma continues, her voice steadier now. He spends hours every day in physical therapy. Missing just one session can undo a whole week of progress. When I blocked their van, he missed his appointment and cried all night, thinking it was his fault. The courtroom remains completely still. Emma's next words are barely a whisper. I expected her to yell at me, to tell me how awful I was. Instead, she asked if I'd ever felt invisible. Judge Caprio's voice turns gentle. And what did you say? I told her yes. I feel that way all the time. The silence that follows feels heavier than anything before it. Then the doors open again. A man in an expensive dark suit strides in, radiating confidence and impatience, the kind of presence that dominates a room instantly. Senator Richard Richardson. Judge Caprio, he begins smoothly, slipping into his practiced political tone. I'm here to resolve this unfortunate misunderstanding. The judge does not stand. This is not a misunderstanding, Senator. It's a moment of clarity. The senator frowns, clearly unaccustomed to resistance. My daughter is being exploited for sensational headlines. You know how these media situations work. Let's handle this quietly and efficiently. I'm sure we can reach a mutually beneficial arrangement. No, Judge Caprio says simply. We will not. Emma turns toward her father, desperation flickering across her face. Dad, please don't. He waves her off dismissively, keeping his focus on the judge. You've made your point. Send me the final amount, and I'll have this resolved within the hour. Judge Caprio's tone remains unchanged. You've resolved everything in her life, except the one thing that matters, most accountability. The senator's jaw tightens. I don't appreciate moral lectures, then consider this a civics lesson. Judge Caprio interrupts calmly. Your daughter isn't guilty of arrogance, Senator. She's guilty of imitation. She learned this behavior by watching you. The room feels electrified, as though the air itself has gone still. Emma's voice breaks as she speaks. Dad, please stop speaking for me. Her father turns, startled by the change in her tone. She is no longer pleading or seeking approval. Instead, there is quiet strength in her words. Judge Caprio speaks again, his voice gentler now. Perhaps this is the first time she's speaking as herself, rather than as your political accessory. Let her. The senator's hand drops from the handle of his briefcase. For the first time, he seems smaller than his imposing title suggests. Emma meets her father's gaze directly. You can't fix everything with money and influence. You've tried your whole life, but you never fixed me. He says nothing, perhaps because he has no prepared response. The judge looks between them thoughtfully. You've spent your career building walls of power and protection, Senator. But you forgot that walls also keep love out. For a long moment, no one speaks or moves. Then Judge Caprio adds quietly, You're free to leave, Senator. This isn't your trial to manage. The man hesitates, unaccustomed to being dismissed. Then he turns and walks out without another word. Emma's hands tremble slightly, but she does not cry. Sometimes, Judge Caprio observes softly. The bravest thing a child can do is stop inheriting their parents' silence. Her reply is barely audible. It's the first time he's ever really listened to me. She entered the courtroom as Senator Richardson's daughter, carrying the weight and privilege of that title. When she left, the only name that mattered was her own. The next morning, the courtroom feels almost intimate, with only a handful of people present. Judge Caprio sits quietly at the bench, reviewing the file one final time. When the door opens, he doesn't look up. Please sit down, Miss Richardson. Emma does so without hesitation. She has no phone, no makeup, and no pride left to hide behind. She wears a plain gray sweater, and her eyes look older than before. Latest correspondence, Judge Caprio says, finally meeting her gaze. He requested this matter be handled through private channels. She lets out a small, humorless laugh. He always prefers private channels. The judge nods knowingly. Tell me something. When was the last time you had a genuine conversation with him, really talked, not just exchanged information? Emma's eyes drift toward the table. He says personal discussions and emotions are distractions from important work. And what qualifies as an important conversation in your home? The judge asks. She pauses, thinking carefully. Campaign donations, voter demographics, managing public perception. Everything is evaluated as political strategy. And where do you fit into that strategy? Judge Caprio asks. I'm the evidence, she says quietly. I'm supposed to be the perfect daughter who proves he's a good family man. I'm the story that makes him seem relatable. Judge Caprio folds his hands. You sound exhausted from being someone else's proof. Her voice nearly breaks. I'm tired of feeling invisible in my own life. For a moment, he says nothing. Then, without pity or false comfort, he asks, Do you want to stop being her, the girl who laughs at other people's pain because she doesn't know what it feels like to be truly seen? She looks up and meets his gaze. I don't know who else I could be. That, he says gently, is exactly where real growth begins. A knock interrupts them. The bailiff enters and hands Judge Caprio a sealed envelope. He opens it and reads silently, his expression darkening slightly. Another message from your father, he says. He's withdrawn his earlier acknowledgement of wrongdoing. He now claims you were provoked and harassed by the woman in the parking lot. Emma's face turns pale. He what? Judge Caprio sets the paper down carefully. He's blaming a mother using a wheelchair for your actions. Do you see the pattern, Miss Richardson? Even your mistakes are never allowed to be yours. Tears fill her eyes. He doesn't mean to hurt me. He just doesn't know any other way to live. Neither did you, Judge Caprio replies. But you're learning. She takes a deep breath, twisting her fingers nervously. Yesterday, after he left the courtroom, I went back to see Mrs. Bennet again. I asked her how she stays calm when the world treats her unfairly. And what did she tell you? Emma smiles faintly. She said, because anger is heavy. And my son's wheelchair already weighs enough. Judge Caprio's eyes glisten slightly. A wise woman. She gave me something, Emma says, pulling a small silver heart pin from her pocket. She told me to wear it whenever I start forgetting that people matter more than appearances. The judge nods in approval. A reminder born of grace. Emma hesitates, then continues. She didn't even want my apology. She just said she hoped I'd grow into someone who could apologize without being told to. Then she's already forgiven you. He replies with a faint smile. They sit together in a moment of quiet understanding. Then Judge Caprio stands and steps toward the edge of the bench. Miss Richardson, I'm ready to deliver my decision. But before I do, understand that what I'm about to say isn't about punishment, it's about guidance. She straightens in her chair. I'm listening. You will pay the fines, he says. But that's only a small part of what comes next. Tomorrow, you'll come with me to the community center where Mrs. Bennet volunteers. You'll spend a week helping the children there and learn how to give without an audience. Emma's eyes widen. You're serious? Completely. Her lips tremble, showing both fear and relief. And after that week, he pauses deliberately. You'll decide who you want to become because for the first time in your life, no one else will make that decision for you. All her life, Emma had been managed, shielded from consequences, and pushed toward impossible perfection. In that moment, the greatest gift she received wasn't leniency or special treatment. It was the chance to take responsibility for her own choices. Outside a brick building at the edge of town, a weathered sign reads, Haven Community Center. Emma sits quietly beside the judge, hands folded in her lap. She wears no jewelry, carries no phone, and has no entourage, only stillness and anticipation. This isn't part of your legal sentence, Judge Caprio explains as they step out. It's part of your education as a human being. Inside, the air smells faintly of crayons and cleaning supplies. Laughter drifts from a nearby room, the genuine sound of children at play. Emma pauses at the doorway, suddenly uncertain. Mrs. Bennet stands near a row of wheelchairs, helping a young boy adjust his safety straps. When she looks up and sees Emma, she neither smiles nor turns away. Hello again, Emma says softly. The woman nods. You actually came. I said I would. Mrs. Bennet gestures toward the activity room. Come help. Today's painting day. Just so you know, it gets messy. Emma removes her coat and rolls up her sleeves. At first, she says nothing. She hands out brushes, wipes tables, and fills cups with water. The children don't know or care who she is. To them, it is simply another adult helping out. One boy accidentally spills paint across her sweater and giggles nervously. Emma surprises herself by laughing genuinely. Judge Caprio watches from the doorway. Arms crossed, saying nothing but noticing everything. An hour passes quietly. Then Mrs. Bennet approaches with a small canvas. A child has drawn a stick figure with golden hair beside a smaller figure in a wheelchair. Above them, in uneven letters, are the words, Thank you, Miss Emma. Emma studies the picture for a long moment. Her eyes glisten, but her voice stays steady. Who made this? A shy boy raises his hand hesitantly. Me? Emma kneels beside his wheelchair. Why? She asks. He shrugs with childlike honesty. Because you looked sad, something inside her shifts. She gently hugs the boy, careful of his wheelchair, and whispers, "Thank you." Mrs. Bennet's voice comes from behind her. "You don't need to prove anything here. Just be kind." When they leave the center later that day, the sun is setting. Emma carries the small painting under her arm, handling it with care. She and the judge remain silent until they reach the car. Finally, Judge Caprio asks, "So, Miss Richardson, what did you learn today?" She smiles faintly. "That grace speaks louder than power, and it's much harder to earn." He nods approvingly. That's a lesson some people never learn, no matter how much money they have. She turns to him with genuine curiosity. "Do you think my father will ever understand that?" Judge Caprio sighs thoughtfully. "Perhaps. But even if he doesn't, you will. And that's enough." They drive back in comfortable silence. The child's painting resting between them as a quiet reminder of something important that has been restored. A week later, the case officially concludes. The courtroom feels smaller and more intimate that day. Emma arrives early and chooses to stand at the front rather than sit with the other defendants. Judge Caprio. She says before he begins, "I want to pay my fines myself." He smiles gently. "You already have." She hesitates, confused. "Then let me say something." The judge nods. "I used to think rules were for people without connections. I believed empathy was a weakness," she says, her voice steady. "But I was wrong. The real weakness is needing others to fear you because you've never truly felt loved." The courtroom falls completely silent. Even the court stenographer looks up. Emma continues, her voice growing stronger. "You once told me that accountability is a form of freedom. I didn't believe you then, but I do now." Judge Caprio leans forward, warmth in his expression. "Then I'll say something no one has said to you before. I'm proud of you." For the first time, she doesn't look away or deflect the praise. "Thank you, Your Honor." He smiles with paternal gentleness. "No, thank you for reminding everyone here that justice isn't about titles or influence. It's about transformation." She nods, holding the child's painting close as she turns to leave. At the door, she pauses to hold it open for an elderly woman entering the courtroom. Small act noticed by few. But not by Judge Caprio. She entered the courthouse believing her family name would shield her from consequences. She left with a different understanding. Real power isn't inherited through wealth or lineage. It's earned through the choices you make, one by one, and that day. In a quiet Rhode Island courtroom, a judge didn't just close a case, he opened a conscience.